One of the questions I get asked a lot is, why are there so many rules in the Catholic Church or in following Jesus? Why do we have so many moral restrictions and so many things we got to do? And if you ever come to the Catholic Church, there's standing and sitting. And what's with all these rules? Now, sometimes we can be tempted to focus on the rules, but I think if we do that, we miss the main part of our faith, which is something much more deep and exciting. When I was a little kid, my older brother taught me about football. He introduced me to his love for this incredible sport that I still love today, my whole family loves. And the way that he introduced me to football was not by starting with the rules of football. He didn't sit me down with a big rule book and talk about, you have 4 attempts to advance the ball 10 yards. If you don't, you have to punt on the 4th down, or it's a turnover after the 4th down. He didn't say if one of the offensive linemen's engaged and he's holding, that's a 10-yard penalty called holding. He didn't talk about the out of bounds, how if your foot touches the white, then you are out of bounds, you're out there, you're down. If your knee touches the ground. We didn't go into any of the rules when we started. We started with playing football. We started with him teaching me how to throw a spiral. I still struggle with that, but teaching me how to throw a spiral. We started by watching great players. I learned about players that are still my favorite players today in the history of the game. Great players like Mike Singletary or Walter Payton, people who played the game with passion and ferocity and who did everything they could to win the game. So what ended up happening is I fell in love with the game, with the sport of football. And because I fell in love with the sport of football, I wanted to learn the rules. I think far too often when people begin living their faith or maybe grow up in a Christian or Catholic household, that a lot of times they can start with the rules, that you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that these are the rules and this is how you have to live. Now, those rules are important because just like in football, if you didn't have rules in football, you don't have football, you don't have a game, but they're not the most important thing. Those are basically, that's kind of the outline for what happens on the inside of the game, which is the good stuff, which is the passion and the fire and the victory and the great feats of athleticism that happen in football. The same thing's true with our faith, that our faith is an incredible romance, that God has invited us into a relationship with him that is bold and dynamic and world-changing. The rules that we have, the moral rules and everything else in our faith are to help us to live that life to the full. They're not the main point. They're super important and we don't get rid of them. We don't set those aside. Those rules are to help us to flourish in this relationship of love. And that relationship is what God has invited us into today. That's the relationship that God wants to have with you and I today because we were made for glory. God bless you.